Uh, let's start with a controversy. Suresh mentioned, we are good friends. Suresh mentioned that the world is flat. I'm now going to prove that the world is not flat. Okay. Okay. It is made flat by industries who want to mass produce their product. Okay. But the world is very complex, it's not flat, and that's part of my presentation. Uh, Actually, I'm going to talk about three things. There are three completely different modules. They happen from different part of my life. I'll start with learning from people. I spent almost 40 years trying to work with people, trying to understand them, and trying to look at how best we can study them so that their ideas, their inspirations, and their needs are converted into products. Last few years, because probably I'm getting older and it's not easy to move with people and try and observe them, I changed my strategy and combined two separate things. I'm also into game design. I teach game design. Lots of games have come in the market by Fun School and others. There's some come on the international market also. Can we use games to study people? So that's the second part of my study. And the third part of study is I have increasingly realized that understanding user is not adequate. There's a transition that occurs between understanding user and creating ideas. And that's where you need to create some out-of-box questions in order that you get an innovation. I'm not sure whether we'll get time for the last one, but because Suresh Shetty has already covered a lot about how consumers are studied, let me go a little fast on the first part of it, and then I'll spend more time on the second and the third one. Okay. I always call it as an art of people watching. It is frankly an art. You nearly, everybody knows that there are ethnography and all those kind of techniques which are used, but it still remains an art. You need to immerse yourself and try and understand what people want. Okay. We believe that the world is flat, yeah, but the world is not flat. For instance, refrigerators in India, just imagine they are not existed anywhere in the world and they were first time discovered in India, they would have been very different. Okay. For instance, kind of foods that we eat, kind of foods that we use every day, and the way we use the refrigerator is very different. I will give you some stories as we go along. We studied refrigerator in extensive detail. The cars, for instance, completely Western. Look at our driving culture. Look at the way we park our cars. I'm not sure why we don't have a pre-scratch styling of car, because within 6 months every new car gets scratched. So you might as well have scratch as part of your aesthetics. So we don't seem to accept the fact that we are different. We would like to be very Western in our attitude, and we would also like to see that we are like Westerners, so we should have the same product. And because of that, the world seems to become very flat. And there are a lot of things like the hospital, shopping malls, residences. Our living habits are so very different, but we still have this very Western way of living. Look at any advertisement that comes in the newspaper. It's so Western in appearance. We don't seem to kind of accept the fact that we live differently. Anyway, let's come back to why watch people. One of the reasons why you should watch people is to learn from them. One commercial view would be that because you're learning, you might be able to convert them into the idea. But people are a fantastic resource. I haven't stopped learning for the last so many years. Every time I've taken a project, there's a lot that I've learned from people. Recently, we did something for slums, and there's so much you can learn from Dharavi. So I'll show you part of that as we go. And another thing that is important is to learn from them, and that's most important. You cannot go to people and say that, look, I'm a designer, I just want to know what your needs are, and they're just going to give you a list of things saying that, here, take this list and go away. It doesn't happen like that. You just have to be part of that family, stay there for a while and try and understand what they want and try to get them to speak. We're different in many counts. People are different because of their background, because of their education, profession, lifestyle, and upbringing, culture. So obviously we cannot say that it's the same product that everybody wants. I hope to show that systematic people watching can lead to solutions that are creative, effective, simple, and local. Okay. There are a large number of techniques which are used. One of them is contextual, the other one is ethnography, which is being simplified to corporate ethnography, so you can do it faster. Then there are user studies, which is a more traditional name for it. And typically we kind of use some of these methods to understand what people want and spend about 50% of our design time in understanding people, which of course Suresh Sethi showed how Whirlpool also spends that kind of a time to understand people. We also observe people when they're shopping. I have personally stood in shops as a shopkeeper's assistant younger days, trying to understand how do people make decisions. Okay? I've got students to go as husband and wife to buy a refrigerator in order to understand what stories does the salesman tell. Okay? And there's a lot that you can understand from what happens, okay? Including the feature that you showed about keeping vegetable fresh. We had noticed that. And this young couple, this student saying that we just got newly married and we wanted, they went and asked, what is this? The salesman told them, "Aisa hi kuch laga hai." Okay, that's the level of knowledge that's available at showrooms. They don't know what the product is all about, but basically they will try to push a product, including the way the display is arranged. It depends totally on the commission. If Whirlpool gives more commission, their refrigerators are first and then the next one will come. So you get a broad-based data-driven kind of a method, which is, and there's depth in coverage. So we look at qualitative aspect of it. We don't look at 100 consumers and 200 consumers and all that, which is what marketing people are supposed to do. We look at only few qualitatively different people, and we'll try to look at interpretations of that. Okay. We've done, right from 70s, I've been working with this. So we worked with washing machines, we worked with industrial catering appliance, postbox, mobile. In fact, with postbox, I actually traveled with the person who collects letters on his beat to understand what kind of difficulties he faces when he empties the letters and all that. We talked to them. I sat them in the canteen, and something interesting comes. I said, when the load becomes high, he still continues to carry it like this. I told him, why don't you use a cart? He says, no, I will not use a cart. वो हमाल का job है. See the difference in the perception? They don't want to lift it. They don't mind lifting it, but they don't want that cart. Now, of course, things have changed with this trolley around. It has got a status that probably it didn't have. Done healthcare, refrigerators, ATM, and also we did a lot of projects for Hindustan Unilever, detergent packs, toothpaste, and things. Very interesting situations are there. In studying washing machine, we went to extremely rich people, worldly Seaface and Mulberry and all that. We went to people in Thane and Dombivli and that area. There are people in Bombay who have actually bought a machine because their friend had it, and she called up saying, I got a machine, why don't you also buy it? And this lady says, okay, why don't you order it for me? She didn't even see it. When the machine came, it was installed in the bathroom. She doesn't know how to use it. She says, my servant does all that. Against that, there is a middle class family who think that machine should not be delivered if you can't open it immediately. He says, when a machine comes to our house, it's an event. So the family gathers, the neighbors come in, and then the fellow says, you can't open it, my engineer will come and open it, so it will take 2 days, 3 days or something like that. For them, it was a big event, that getting a washing machine. We met a middle class family who actually returned the machine because there was a small scratch. And I asked him, itna chota scratch hai kyun? Why do you bother to return it? He says, nahi, hamara white ka paisa hai. I need a good product. Okay? These are the people who also invite you to take lunch or dinner with you. Okay? They will tell you everything that they have, and with all their heart. Against the richer people who just treat you like another marketing person who says you come and gone and that's finished. And that's the reason why I started using games, by the way. So culture does drive people. We did work for ATM. This was run for NCR. And we have this interesting problem. We were under the impression that rich would like ATM because they need money frequently. The people who love ATM are poor people. And it came out in several interviews. The simple reason for that was that they said that if we go to bank, we are not treated well because we are not educated. The staff there is educated, we are not educated, so they'll kind of annoy him, saying, "Tumhara sign theek nahi, wapis karo, ye karo." They don't like that. Actually, one of them said, "Machine never gets angry with us." Okay, see, look at their perception. So they were very happy. Again, that rich were not bothered. Whether they go to bank or whether they could take it from money from ATM, it doesn't seem to matter to them at all. We also looked at how poor people learn ATM. Ever wondered how they learn ATM? It's very interesting. Poor have really great strategies of tackling this complex world. They have, they go to a bank and then try and study who are the people in the bank. Then try to find out one for who is a gaon wala. Okay, और उसको जाके पूछते हैं मुझे जरा बाहर आके सिखाना. Okay, and they want to learn. They are more serious about it. They are more serious about using it. Okay, so watching people is important because there are too many subcultures within the country. I have spent all my life in Bombay, and I don't think I have understood Bombay at all. More I research in Bombay, I realize that I know very little about the city. Okay. There hasn't been a single study. I must have done about 15-20 studies. Not a single study which did not surprise me. Every time some very interesting data comes in and you get surprised. And I believe one of the criteria that you should have for good study is to see that it surprises yourself. Okay. I think we can skip this. As far as ATM is concerned, it has got that air-conditioned booth, and how many people it puts off because there is an air conditioner and there is a watchman there. People don't want to go there because they somehow feel that it is not for them. This was 5 years ago when ATMs were not. Now things have changed, and also watchmen have started more scared. If you go to people with a simple thing like me or they, I know everything and let me see how people use my product, you're not going to learn anything. If you go with an attitude saying, I want to learn, Indians are very good at talking. They tell all kinds of stories. And you learn a lot from this process. Okay. So what all we do is to capture these perceptions with common sense. And when people face difficulty, they solve their own problem. That's another thing. There's so much we can learn from how people solve their problem. We met a hawker who does not know how to use ATM. He learnt it just because he has to go home at night at 10 o'clock with his daily earning. And he had a problem of carrying it every day to go back to Kalyan. So he managed to get an account and he found a very, very convenient way of putting money into it with no tensions. Even educated people find it difficult to put money into an ATM. He figured out a way which is completely tension-free. We proposed it to NCR and NCR now accepted that as one of the ideas. Okay? So the reason why they solved the problem is because they badly need it. And there's a lot that we can learn from them rather than saying that he's misusing ATM. He's not misusing it. He's finding an interesting use of that. Ever wondered how taxiwala who doesn't read calls you back? We looked at how they write their numbers. There's some interesting strategies that they have. We converted that strategies into a directory that they have, which makes the life easier for them. They try to look at patterns, they try to look at, and at that time, the number portability wasn't there. So 91 would start with something else and 98 would be another company and they would know whose phone it is. So they make these kind of, marks on what they write, and that is the way to remember whose phone is, because they really can't read the whole thing. We did this for Hindustan Unilever. We looked at a detergent pan. We went and found out how people open packs. It was a complete from shop bringing it home and all that. They do all kinds of dangerous things. I'm not sure whether it's not. Okay. And based on this, the one on the left side, where she found a very interesting way of cutting a pack, which makes the opening larger. And we just converted that into an idea for a product. And that's the one that was introduced in SAP. In ATM, this is the ATM. The interesting thing about a little bit about world is flat, that finally it became more popular in China, this product, than in India. Because India, they had a problem with royalty and things like that. Okay. What we do when we watch people is to ensure diversity. We try to see qualitatively different people, so that we get variety in that. and then select environment, go and stand there. We actually physically used to go and stand in front of the ATM booth. When a person comes out, we'll ask him, do you have time? And if he's ready to speak, then you start talking to him. This is called as part of contextual inquiry. We looked at extreme cases also. For instance, we went to a very old lady who to find out what can she choose. She said, no, I can't handle ATM. So I gave her my card and asked her to withdraw. And we have a photograph of her when the money came out. She was so happy. And she said, "Itna simple hai, so why my children have not taught me?" That was a comment she made. But she just didn't know, so she was so cared about it. So going to extreme people also helps. Okay. So diversity and extreme cases is what is really resource for design. So basically, people watching is an effective bottom-up approach. You don't start with a preconceived idea. You go to people, try and find out what they want, and try and see how you can convert them into product ideas. Okay. So all I'm saying is potentially it can create innovation, great products, good user experience. This is what can give you as a user. But the reason potential is in inverted commas is because that is not enough. You need to understand them deeper and try to convert them into good ideas. Having done this for many years, I realized that there is a limitation. That people really don't come out with what they have inside. And can we do something better than that? Okay. So we looked at all this ethnographic thing. We went away from that and looked at going beyond the routine user studies and created new tools. What we decided is can we gamify the approach? Can we create some kind of games or gamify the whole process by which you start getting data? And let me explain you how it engages people. Then it also helps organizations discover opportunities in design, marketing, and innovation. Now, what is the difference between this approach and the first approach? First approach is based, conventional approach is based on contextual interviews, ethnography, then focus interviews and things like that. It is more towards asking people. There are challenges in this approach. One of them is to retain interest beyond 15 minutes is tough. People get bored and saying, yeah, another person trying to pester me, so they want to finish that thing. They also depend a lot on their memory. Saying that something may have happened earlier, but they have forgotten about it. They will not tell you. Then there are cultural issues. Most of the Indians are very polite. They will never tell you anything bad about product. In fact, Indians tend to blame themselves rather than products. Exactly opposite of what happens in US. They blame the product and not themselves. And they're saying the product, I didn't do anything. So you never get that information. There's also shyness, there's also privacy issues. For instance, nobody tells you about their income so easily. Now we need to create gains by which this information comes out automatically. Okay. Then radically new ideas don't seem to go. This is something which will be fairly, at a standard level. And decisions are largely independent of real situation because you're interviewing him. What happens is within that context and it doesn't go beyond that. And finally, what people think and what people say are two different things. So in interview, they will tell you because they want to tell you good things. They will tell you good things, but that doesn't really give you the results. So what we do is to create a game-like situation, which has got, it's a kind of a it's called a non-game context. That's what gamification is about. The goal is to have some intrinsic as well as extrinsic rewards for him, and basically the purpose is to engage him. And the next slide I'll show you, it's about a tailor in a slum. He stays in 8 feet by about 10 feet room, where his shop is also part of it, and see how he starts and what he ends up with. He starts with a yarn.
काम दे आजा ना थोड़ा दरवाजा एक दरवाजा नसला तो आपण जाणार कसं त्याच्यापेक्षा आपण थोडंसं एक करा ना त्याच्यापेक्षा आपण असं केलं असतं सर सीधा सीधा हा दरवाजा ऐसा हा बगीचा
There is a sense of achievement that he has, and that's why he's willing to spend 1.5 hours of his working time, which is something which you should have spent in tailoring and earning money. But he didn't mind. He says, "Can I continue?" Okay. So you can see a radical difference between the conventional approach of interviewing and gamification. Huh? Purpose was to create a home, and believe me, fantastic ideas come. I'll show you one more example of how a family sits around and designs their home. I mean, the radically different way of thinking. The way middle class thinks of home and way they think of home is very different. Okay, so what do people think about their product, their experiences? How do they make product choices? All this comes out because he's talking all the time. Okay, he's encouraged to talk. We videotape the entire session and analyze it. Okay. There are some other games also which are there, how you structure your day, what you do in the day and all things like that. So these are all games which people start talking, and once they start talking, you get some very rich data out of it. Okay. We also try to create a kind of a real world situation and show how you would react and why so. So once the game starts, he starts constructing, he starts challenging himself and starts speaking, and that's something which gives you very rich data. Okay. Here the question about target was the EWS, that is economically weak section. So we're looking at 90,000 a year kind of a salary, basically hawkers, drivers and things like that. We gave them a situation, you got a lottery. So now the money is not a problem, how will you design your house? Okay. We didn't tell them later that tax mein आधा पैसा चला गया. So he did his house and then we told him, now एक room कम करना है. Then he started struggling as to what is he ready to compromise with in order that he can still make a house which is close to his dream. And that's how you understand his priorities. Okay.
मेरा जो
This is the family
सपना है वो हॉल बड़ा होना चाहिए.
ओके, ये बड़ा हो गया ना हॉल.
हॉल सबसे बड़ा.
ये ठीक है, ये वाला
फ्लैट है एक्चुअली, पर वो बंगला दिखता है.
तो बाथरूम के लिए है आपको जहाँ.
अरे लेकिन एक ही रूम हो जाएगा हॉल. ये तो हमारे जैसा हो गया.
बाथरूम ढिंचक मांगता है.
हाँ, नाचने का मजा है.
एकदम मजा है. बेडरूम को अटैच होना एक ही चाहिए और बड़ा चाहिए.
किचन तुम्हारा एक बेडरूम हो गया, इसी में सब कुछ कर रहे बात सब है. सिर्फ और एक बेडरूम होता बड़ा वाला हॉल जैसा. ठीक है, के लिए खाली रख. नीचे की बात कर रहा है ना, ऊपर की छोड़ दे. ऊपर का बाद में देखेंगे. इधर पीछे
जितना ये नीचे बना है उतना ही ऊपर रहेगा कि नहीं.
हाँ,
अभी इसमें ऊपर भी मैंने माना है एक बेडरूम.
तो मेरी स्टडी का
ये सेपरेट है, जैसा पढ़ाई का वगैरह, किसी को डिस्टर्ब ना हो इसमें. ये सब कोई बैठे आराम से सेपरेट बातें कर सके. ठीक है, तो किसी को कोई टेंशन.
Okay, how do you think they organized their house? It was a fantastic surprise. First, the family decided where the television should be. Okay, they looked at alternative positions on the television. Then everybody decided, if a television is here, this is where I'm going to cook, this is where I'm going to study, this is where I'm going to eat. So they built the whole thing around the television. There's so many interesting insights. Everybody wanted an entrance experience, which would mean that if somebody is passing by, he should know that I am inside and this is what I am. So they wanted something to be extraordinarily different as far as the entrance is concerned. So there are lots of other insights which are there, because this is quite rich. There are about 15 families on which we have these videos. The point is, afterwards, once one of the room is removed, then you start really understanding its priorities. Initially, they are just saying we want this, we want this, we want that. Then remove the room, and then you start really realizing what the family is committed to. So user can articulate, demonstrate complex aspirational ideas. Interestingly, it's not that you need to really go to people who are not articulate. We've done this with professors in some other context, in another project. And believe me, they use the similar language. Okay, suddenly they forget that they're professors and they start using very natural language with each other, which they would normally not have used in conversation, because they're completely immersed in the whole thing. we wanted to find out how they spend their monthly income. Now it's very touchy kind of a subject, because they would never kind of give that kind of information. We actually created a game. We created a task, and we asked them to. This is not exactly. This is slightly above in terms of income, not slum dwellers. But we did this for slum dwellers. So there is a money that they start distributing around anything like a game, and then you know how they spend their entire, and you also know what their salary is. I'm telling you, the sound is. So we knew that they spend so much on rent. We also know that they spend on food, fuel, rent, and food so much, and we also know what the other things. So we also know the income. And this is all that I'm trying to say is, if you can create games, you try to get the kind of insights that you would normally not get. Okay? How do people use refrigerators? Normally we go and ask people, saying, "Aapka refrigerator dekha," and most of the time, they have already cleaned it up because they know you are coming. Or alternately, they will show you and say, "This is what they keep here." What we did is something different. We gave them a blank paper with a refrigerator drawn on it and food items, huge collection of food items. Our idea was, what do they do with veg and non-veg? And people have very interesting strategies of how to segregate veg and non-veg within the fridge. So that all came out because they started arranging things. There are lots of difficulties that came out, saying that, for instance, coriander is extremely difficult to keep. Lemons are very difficult to keep. Now, even that little tray that you have is not adequate. Most accessible space is taken by the door. Door shut is taken by the water. So you don't really have an access to these small things at all. Interesting thing about it, we had a lot of things for non-veg, or also beer bottles and all that. We went to a family which is not supposed to be into beer and non-veg, and the mother was doing the game, and she said, "I keep this here, I keep this here," and all that. And when it came to beer bottles, she said, "Nahi, hum nahi pete." The daughter said, "But Papa to lete hai." So suddenly you start knowing much more about the family than what you get through, because in an interview you said, "No, we are completely vegetarians," and things like that. Interestingly, think about what vegetarians do with large freezers. Our problem is that a lot of these new freezers have a very large freezer. They have fantastic way of using it. Okay, so users can describe their product, activities, experiences in greater detail. That's the first takeaway. The second takeaway is, users tend to volunteer personal private information more readily in a gamified situation. And one thing is, in Godrej thing, we remember we did that safe, and no shopkeeper wants to talk about his safe. They won't even tell you where the safe is. Give them a picture and they start putting things into safe. Idhar rakhte hain. And the words that he will use, "Log ye karte hai, log ye idhar rakhte hai, log ornament idhar rakhte hai." Log means actually he himself, but he will not tell that it is his own. He will sort of show that it's a third party kind of a safe that he's talking about. But you get what information you're looking for. So the question is, how involving users and stakeholders in the process can develop an extremely good product environment. It also helps you to innovate, give an innovative offerings. So the takeaway is, understanding complex features and evaluating trade-offs is an important term. So finally, we found that gamification of user studies helps in four. First is it engages users. That's one. It helps you to understand their choices. It helps you to influence behavior. It helps you to co-create because they are involved in the creation process, and it also helps you to innovate by new offerings. Okay, so this is the thing that we do. And gamification suggests is engaging users, give a richer data, deeper insights, and potentially powerful ideas. Okay, I'll just quickly show you how this is not adequate. What you really need is something more, and that's all that slum study we did. We also created solutions for that. So what is next? User studies can give you great insights, but a lot of people ask that question: what happens afterwards? Okay, do you really create a product, a new product, or not? So personally, I feel that it does not. A good data, a rich data, does not ensure innovation. You need something in between, and that in between is what I call as you should be able to create out-of-box questions from that data, which you try and answer through design. Let me explain you through a case study of affordable housing, which floated an interesting question. Knowing that we found families staying in, can you believe that there is a family right across the compound wall of IIT outside, which stays in 4 feet by 8 feet apart, a small room. And they manage their everything, including cooking in that small room. Now, we decided to kind of look at this kind of an income group, 90,000 and 1,50,000 a year. We also look at, just to give you an idea of what Bombay is all about, if you have 5 lakhs of rupees, then you would be able to buy only about 7 square feet in Kolaba and this thing. In Andheri, you would be probably able to buy 20 square feet, which is just equal to a bed. Okay, and in Virar you will get 90 square feet, not even a room. And in Kalyan you will get 100 square feet, with just one room, not even a toilet. And if you want a toilet and a small kitchen involved, then you have to go beyond Titwala and all. And this is what people are doing. Okay, most of the construction is going on. But this is not exactly what people are looking for. Poor people, we found, want to stay close to where the job opportunities are. And job opportunities are always on high value land. So there is an interesting conflict that we needed to solve, and that's why 52% of Bombay is slums, because they want to stay close to the place of work. So this is Dharavi. And this is not unique to Bombay. This is unique to many countries in the eastern region, Asian region. Just look at what happens in Hong Kong. They created this suburban housing. You might just get one of those windows there for you. It's a large number of families staying here. This is their low-cost housing. But inner city housing in Hong Kong is actually vertical. The room is vertical. We just live like this. Okay. Worst case is, if you can't afford that one room, then you can buy a cage. So there are a large number of people who just own a cage. So this is what is happening world over. So we thought that we would start looking at what can we do, and our data showed that 25 million houses are required and 38 million houses are required by 2030. So user studies also showed that poor must live on a high value land. So we came out with an idea of a 3D living, which came out of following questions. One of them is, if the inner city land is costly, what if we sell building space not on a square feet basis but on a cubic feet basis? And suddenly you start seeing problem very differently. Okay? If you go to Dharavi, they use their cubic feet better. Middle class uses square feet, because they want to spread things around. People in poor houses know how to use their vertical space better. So we changed that question and created that. Then second question was, can we accommodate a family of 6? That means grandparents, father and mother, and 2 children, in a 10 feet by 10 feet by 12.5 feet room. Now, this comes from municipal law. This is the minimum size of the room permitted in Bombay. So, can a family stay in that? And third question is, if IKEA wants to address this issue through their furniture, what will they do? Okay. All slightly out of the box question, and the obvious reaction to the students was, no, it's not possible. Okay. So how to make it possible? So we simplified that, saying that, okay, now your space is 10 feet by 10 feet by 18 feet. Try and design. They came out with different ideas because the height is more easily available. Okay. Then I reduced it 18 feet to 16 feet, 16 feet to 14 feet, and 14 feet to 12.5 feet. Everything fitted. Okay, we have a full scale. I'll show you the thing. We decided that we will actually create a slotted angle space in which you can see and experience the space itself. So this is what the students are doing. They're trying to build a small space and complete the house. Everything here has double or triple uses. So even a toilet, when not in use, part of the toilet becomes part of kitchen, the way it is worked out. A television can be seen from 2 levels. Ladder can go up so that space is available below. So everything has double, triple uses. There are no locks, but there are a series of platforms. Some of the platforms are beds, some of the platforms are floors, some of the platforms are writing tables and things like that. So we sort of constructed these lighting tables and things like that as platforms. This is the toilet, which is, when fully in use, is 4 feet by 3 feet. And you can get in and it has 2 doors. And finally, when it's not in use, you can fold it and the part of the space is your room. About 1/4 of the space is retrieved for normal use. Okay, so we looked at many possibilities, and then we also looked at the possibility of a top floor being rented out, because that's the minimum requirement in Islam, that you should be able to rent out part of the space. We should also have a family staying up top and some business being done below, and you can also and our major consideration is FSI being most expensive in Bombay. It should be conserved. So we kept that 9 square feet, 10 feet or 20 feet as a must. Okay. Then we decided that we will construct actually one in steel so that we can get families to come and experience it. So this is what was built. Okay, and this is what it looks like from inside. Okay, this is up, and then we got families to come and give comments. Of course, it's in an academic area, so we can't ask somebody to stay there, and nor is the plumbing there. But at least we simulated that and asked them to give comments. And something interesting came out of it. There are these spaces in which we had somehow managed the ceiling fan. They objected to ceiling fan. They said, ceiling fan nahi chahiye. And their logic is simple. Sometimes I sit here, I want my fan to be here. Sometimes I go up, I want my fan to be here. So they would prefer a fan which is standing either on a table or stand on a floor, so that they can carry it around rather than a ceiling fan. While ceiling fan can last longer, it is cheaper in terms of long-term use. They prefer something else. Like that, they gave some suggestions about how you can improve and things like that. So they brought their children in. Children also talked about what we had, even drying clothes and all those things were possible. Okay. So, but this is still a screensaver in the sense nobody lived in that house. We hope to build, we're trying to find finances where we can build and get families to come and stay and give feedback on that. So the pudding is yet to be built and eaten. So what is the takeaway recipe for innovation? According to me, one is routine techniques for user studies. That's one. How you can engage users and get rich data through gamification is the second. And third is the converting this rich data into interesting questions. These three things must happen in order that you can create innovative products. Thank you. Okay. Maybe we can take one or two questions, or we have a workshop. 5 minutes. Yeah. Okay, 5 minutes we'll have questions. After that, we have a workshop where we'll divide into groups, and you start looking at users. The student will tell you what is to be done. So a group will sit together and try and look at it, and you start seeing things very differently. Once you focus on users, you start seeing problems very differently. Okay, so we have one or two questions before we break.
Hello, sir. I'm from packaging background. Like you said about gamification. Like we've been designing different products for different industries, like for FMCG market, for confectionaries, for you can say pharma companies. Like how gamification can work in pharma.
Actually, we are doing a project, but what I have proposed here is gamification for studying users. We were basically using gamification for studying users. So in packaging, if you look at how users use packaging, how designers use packaging, it should be possible to use gamification. We've got very diverse cases where different things are going on. Anyway, we are even looking at one learning site where through gamification we are trying to understand what children and parents want.
Hello, sir. We are a product engineering based company. We convert ideas into products. I mean, we take ideas from the industries that, okay, this thing is to be built, and we provide the research and consultancy, we get the prototype done. The point, again, it is related to gamification, because we need to deal with the shop floor workers while the idea is given by the top management. So what should be the strategy to to engage the shop floor guys to get their problems?
Okay. All right. I can be a standard teacher who says use gamification. Okay. I would not say that. I would try it with workers. They many times have fantastic ideas about how to produce certain things. Okay. But we sit on a table in front of a computer and decide how it should be produced. If you can get them involved in the process, which is what we did with another project, not workers, but at a different level, and they were very satisfied with that idea that they participated and they liked the idea because they participated. One thing we found in slums, whatever decision they have taken themselves, whether good or bad, they like it. They completely support their own decisions. So if you use that as a strategy, it might help you.
They have their own jugaad technology. They use everything in jugaad like that.
Maybe possible to account for it.
Thank
But
you.
I can't 100% guarantee on that. Yeah.
For institutional users, we are going through the gamification process.
Yeah.
So how we are going to design that game?
That's where I come in. Yeah. First is you have to understand what you're looking for. You have to put your objectives down. And for every project, you have to design that game. At least modify some of the games. And we have a lot of off-the-shelf games which we have developed over a period. And for instance, we have to design games now for a learning side, for where we want to get children as well as parents involved and teachers involved, saying this is, create a game for them by which they will tell us what they're looking for. Basically, the idea is co-creation. If you get people involved in it, it is better. But it needs to be designed. There's no one game that can be used. There is a game based on Monopoly also which we have, where people are asked to take decisions and things like that, depending on the money that they have. So that also is. Okay, so we can break now, and you can just experience some of this. These students have arranged a little bit of game-like thing for you in the group. Okay, so let's see how it goes. We have not really tried this out, but let's see how it will. Identifying interesting users and trying to find what their needs are through some interaction. Okay, thank you.